Hey, welcome back to The Juggle is Real. Andryanna here, as always. And I'm here because we need to talk this through. And today's episode, so many of us need this, myself included, because there is so much information in the health and wellness space. I feel like we are being inundated at every direction, and it is getting harder to know what actually matters, what is moving the needle, maybe what we can pass on, what's hype, what's essential, what's evidence based. Maybe what's helpful but not essential. And then the things like we can just, not worry about. So that's why I am so excited to have Dr. Danielle Watson back on the podcast. Dr. Watson was previously on The Juggle is Real way back in episode 82, and we talked about optimizing your well being by tuning into your menstrual cycle and living cyclically. And that was such a helpful episode. It was so grounding. I still live by the principles that she shared in that conversation about thinking of your menstrual cycle like the seasons. Anyway, you can go back and listen to that. But if you didn't hear it, Dr. Danielle Watson is a naturopathic doctor, and she focuses on supporting women through all stages, from preconception and pregnancy through postpartum into perimenopause. And Dr. Watson has really made it her goal to change the dynamic in healthcare so that new mothers especially feel supported as they navigate their motherhood journey. Dr. Watson is a speaker, an educator, and an activist for women and for motherhood, looking to spread the message that being a mom is not a diagnosis. She's completed her Doctor of Naturopathy degree from the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine. And prior to that, she completed her honors Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology from Wilfrid Laurier University here in Ontario. And in her practice, she works closely with women and mothers who are navigating everything from hormone health to mental health. And she's really known, and I can attest to this, for bringing a very practical and evidence-informed approach to care. So today, she is here to help us cut through some of the noise. We are going to talk about what actually has good evidence in terms of health trends right now, what is neutral and what's mostly hype when we're talking about our own wellness and well-being. And of course, and maybe more importantly, what's going to make a difference for you in your day-to-day life. And so just a quick note before we get into the conversation, this episode is based on current research and clinical experience that is shared by Dr. Danielle Watson. It's not meant to replace personalized medical advice. So everyone's body, everyone's situation is different. Always do your own due diligence. Speak with your healthcare provider about what's right for you before you make any decisions. And so on that note, let's dive right in.
This is the Juggle is Real podcast. I hope you feel seen, that you realize your worth, lighten your load, and prioritize your own needs. As we hear from leading experts and well-known faces in the wellness, entrepreneurship, education, and motherhood space, I hope you gain insights, proven practices, and learn actionable tools to help you enjoy the juggle of work, family, and everything in between with a little less stress and a lot more ease, joy, and fun. Most of all, I hope you find what you need to simplify, streamline, and supercharge your own journey of better balance and self-love. Are you with me? Let's get started.
This episode of The Juggle is Real is supported by Whirlpool. We're in spring and it always feels like a natural reset at home for us, and probably for you. A big part of that reset is the seasonal switch of putting away the winter gear and bringing out what we actually need now. We have the Whirlpool Smart Front Load Washer, and it has a fresh flow vent system. I love that it is designed to keep both your clothes and the washer fresh. It includes a dry drum cycle to help reduce moisture within the washer itself. It has antimicrobial protection on the seal, and my favorite is a fan fresh option that keeps clothes tumbling fresh for hours. So if you've ever had a load sit in the washer for longer than planned, I raise my hand here, it helps take that pressure off. It really is a lifesaver for us. And then there's everything that we are pulling out for spring, right? Our jackets and the bedding and seasonal clothing. And a lot of it just needs a refresh because they've been tucked into bins since October. but they don't need a full wash. You know what I mean? So the matching Whirlpool Smart Front Load electric dryer with steam capabilities has a steam refresh cycle that helps release wrinkles, reduce static, and freshen clothes without needing to rewash. I use this a lot. These washer and dryers also feature the intelligent wash and dry technology that automatically adjusts settings, which is especially important and helpful for bulkier seasonal items like coats and bedding. It really is those small shifts that make the whole transition into a new season feel a lot more manageable. You can learn more about this and so much more at whirlpool.ca. That's whirlpool.ca. Now let's get back to the episode. Dr. Danielle Watson, welcome back to The Juggle is Real. How's it going?
Good, good. Thanks for having me.
So funny because we live in and around the same area. I follow you online. I love your content on Instagram. It helps me in my life so much. And I'm always like, save that for later. Save that. I want to come back to that. But we don't get a chance to like chat often
Yeah.
because, life gets busy. And so I'm so thrilled that you are making some time to chat today, because I think this sort of overarching topic of like, what do we do? Like, it can be so confusing with all of these health trends. So first and foremost, thank you for being here. And secondly, like, tell us, for someone who doesn't know, who maybe didn't listen to the first episode that you were on, which was a long time ago, feels like time has flown. Tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are and what you like to do when you're not Dr. Danielle.
Well, thank you so much for having me on again. So I'm a naturopathic doctor. My husband and I own a clinic in the Valley, so just outside of Sudbury. And then I'm a mom to two little kids. Like yourself, I'm always at the hockey arena. My kids are younger, but they play quite a lot. And yeah, we moved up to Northern Ontario maybe 3 years ago, because we like being in the outdoors and we like kind of the slower pace compared to Toronto area. And it's been so wonderful since moving up here. But yeah, I like to educate a lot on Instagram for moms about our health and what we can be doing, what makes sense, kind of making sense of what the noise is out there.
And that's what I appreciate so much. And we were chatting a little bit back and forth. And a few episodes ago, I was just talking about some of the things that I'm personally focusing on right now in this season, and sort of some of the things that I'm trying to do to take a more preventative approach. And I know as a naturopath, that really is the name of the game. Of course, we can react and we can respond when things come up. And of course, we know those little whispers are going to turn to screams. But if we can be preventative, if we can try to do these things, at the start, then we'll have perhaps less problems later, and or maybe it'll be easier to decode as we go. But before we get into everything, I want your opinion, your perspective, because you're in practice, you are seeing women every single day. What are you seeing? Because I know there's a lot of confusion out there. There's a lot of perhaps misinformation. What are women most confused about right now when it comes to our health?
Yeah, I would say I see a lot of women confused with what is my hormones versus what is the challenges of everyday life as a mom. What should I be doing about that stuff? What's normal? What's not? When do I need to be seeking help? I think those are the sort of questions that come up almost every day. I see a broad range of patients, but so sometimes it's, is this just the normal postpartum transition? Is this normal of perimenopause or of menopause? And kind of understanding like, where do I need help versus what makes sense for how busy I am? And then what do I do about it?
Yeah. And I think you bring up such a good point because, you know, the juggle is real and we are all balancing and juggling and trying to have, do all of the things. And there's so much that we're managing on our plates. So you bring about like what is normal slash maybe what's common and what do I do? And I think a lot of that has to do with like our stress levels, like, okay, so is this, because to some degree, to a certain degree, we're always going to have stress in our life, and there are good stressors and bad stressors, and we do need some type of stress in order to be
Yeah.
motivated and take action and do things. But, are we over pathologizing normal stress? And then I want to talk about this whole thing about cortisol imbalance, because that really, let's start there. That's everywhere right
Okay.
now. In practice, what does that mean? And then when you see patients, because I feel like sometimes I feel very dysregulated, sometimes I feel very overwhelmed. Is the stress too much? Like, what are those real signs of maybe stress dysregulation versus what people think over, what we're seeing online and what's being told to us?
100%. Yeah. I always say so cortisol is one of our hormones. And I always say that the hormones are our body's chemical messengers. And the saying
Mm.
goes, don't shoot the messenger. Cortisol, it's rarely, much more rare that it is going errant. It is going on its own and just spiking or declining, and it's not in response to what our body is telling us. There are conditions where cortisol has gone wonky, but they're very rare. And they truly, if we were to run a cortisol blood test, there would be something off there. But it's like less than 1% of the population. Otherwise, our cortisol is being responsive to our stressors. It's telling our body we're under stress. Um, and, back when humans were evolving and we were stressed, I don't know why we always use the example of running away from a lion or whatever. If we were
The
doing
saber-toothed tiger, they were everywhere.
how often we were doing that, but at one point we must have been. But our body would have gone into that fight or flight mode. Our heart would have started pumping faster. Digestion would have been less prioritized, but it was acute. It was hopefully in response to that short term stress. And then that stress was over. In modern life, and I'm probably preaching to the choir, but those stressors just keep coming and we never get it to really stop. It's so our body is responding as though, the traffic on the way to work or your boss being really intense on you or whatever it might be. It's responding as though it's that saber-toothed tiger. And it's not that your cortisol has just decided to go errant on its own, it's that it's responding to the environment we're in. One thing I see a lot is people wanting their cortisol levels tested. Um, Through me, I believe with most places to get blood work done, it's at least a $65 test. And it tells us what are your cortisol levels at that exact moment of the blood draw. It doesn't necessarily tell us information about how you're doing. And so a lot of people come in because they've heard they need it tested online. And I always say, are you stressed? And if they say yes, then we say, you're stressed. And that's the subjective symptom of it. We don't necessarily need to see if the hormone was high that exact moment at 7 o'clock a.m. when we tested it. But yeah, I think a lot of people online are making it as though the cortisol itself is the issue, whereas, like you said, the juggle is real and the stress is what is the issue that we can work on and take care of.
So is that what, like, a lot of people are really focused on functional testing, like the Dutch test? Is that what the Dutch test would show? Or can
Yeah,
you explain that? Because I think that is like, oh yeah, just get that and it's going
yeah,
to solve all your problems. Can you explain it? Or is it basically like, yeah, it's going to tell you exactly at that moment in time what your
mm,
hormone levels are. But as we know that they fluctuate throughout the day, they
yeah.
fluctuate throughout your cycle. Is that sort of what you're explaining right now?
Yeah, yeah, and the Dutch test, I believe it does check cortisol. It became very popular around when I first started practicing about 8 years ago, and it sounds really neat. It takes your yeah, it's really cool, but it takes your dried urine and it tests your hormone levels, and I believe it takes a sample over a couple of days to get that pattern. But the problem is in the research is predominantly done on serum levels or blood levels. And what we don't see in the research is a good correlation between what's going on in the blood and what's going on in the urine, because the urines get the waste products.
Right.
And so it doesn't necessarily show us what's actually happening. We don't have good data on how that relates back to what we do know about hormone levels. Um, as well, with the Dutch test, we don't have data on what we call the sensitivity or the specificity of the test, which means essentially how often do we pick up people who do have the illness versus how often are we saying that people who don't have a problem, and how often are we missing people who do have a problem and we're saying it's negative. The only testing that has been done with the Dutch test has been paid for by the big company called Precision Analytical. Um,
Hmm.
and so while it might give us some data, it comes with these really cool flow charts and it breaks down all the hormones and all their metabolites and it looks really, really cool. We just don't have the data to support it. It's also like a $500 test. And it's not,
Okay.
yeah, it's not, if it's not indicated, even though it might be really cool, it's doing the harm to our wallets when checking all of your hormones. If we ever needed to do that, and it's rarer that we do need to do that, it might be $85 kind of thing. So we can get a
Mm.
lot more data. That's a lot stronger for less if we do need it. But again, those hormones are the chemical messengers. They're not always going errant on their own. They're likely in response to something else going on. And we don't always need data on your estrogen or your progesterone to tell us what's happening in the body, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense what you're saying. And I do really appreciate the practicality behind what you're saying because we want the data, we want the evidence base versus what's just hype versus what just looks cool. And we also want to, not be spending money that's unnecessary. So this is where I want to talk about supplements because this is an area that can be very helpful, but also can be very costly. So we hear a lot about collagen right now, creatine, our greens
Mm.
powders, protein powders. We need more of this, all of that. It has to be a certain brand, a certain type. Can we go through what has strong evidence? Maybe what's neutral, take it or leave
Yeah.
it, and then what's mostly hype, like maybe don't waste your hard-earned cash on that
Yeah.
one.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. It's very much we always say do no harm, but there is harm in spending a person's money in a way that they don't need. And
Hmm.
some supplements, I always say people come in, of course, to see a naturopathic doctor and they want what's natural. But natural doesn't always mean safe. And there's this idea that, I can take as many of a supplement as I want to take because they're harmless. But they're not. They can cause true harm, even land you in the hospital kind of harm. And so we have to take a conscientious approach on, is it completely neutral or can it cause harm if we were to take it in the wrong amount? Yeah, each of those ones, I would say the ones you named are typically considered safe, but whether or not they're indicated might be a different thing.
Okay, so what would the evidence on collagen be? There's so many different powders out there. What do you think? Like, is that one hype? Should we be taking it? Especially, someone who's aging wants, to support their skin. What's the evidence on taking collagen?
Definitely. So, collagen is something we get from our diet, anyways. It's made up of a number of amino acids that we encounter on a day to day basis, predominantly from like bone in meats. Um, the supplements of it, we don't know does this because collagen's a very large molecule. So when we put it in as like a powder into our coffee or what have you, it's hard to know does it get taken in the same way as our collagen from our food does? And we don't fully know that. One paper I highlighted on social media a few weeks ago, I thought it was really interesting because up until recently, we were thinking that collagen supplementation or collagen in our creams was amazing for our skin health, for those fine lines and those wrinkles. And then they did something called a systematic review where they pooled all of the studies. So, say there were like 30 of them, they pooled them all and they looked at them and they said, wow, it really does help with things like wrinkles. But then they controlled for one factor, and the factor was industry funding. So, studies that were funded, and there's nothing wrong with a lot of studies are funded by the companies that make the products or subsidiaries, but they took out all of the industry funded studies and they found that it did not have a substantial effect on things like wrinkles.
Mhm.
Now, collagen, like I said, it's something we're encountering in our day to day life, anyways. It's not what we call a complete protein. So, an egg is a complete protein, it contains all of the essential amino acids. Beans and rice is a complete protein. Collagen is not a complete protein. It is not necessarily harmful, but it can be a choice of, do we need to take this supplement that costs, like $40 a tub? Or do we just need to prioritize like protein rich foods because we'll get those amino acids that make up collagen anyways? And so I say with that one, I would say it's likely a bit on the neutral side. Sometimes I use it in my early postpartum patients, especially those who've had a C section for recovery. It's also really hard to get enough food at that time of life, as we might remember. But it's not going to cause harm, but you don't necessarily need it.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Creatine has been really popular lately as well, and something we thought you only needed if you were like a big
Yeah.
bodybuilder dude at the gym wanting to like pump up the muscles. Seems like there's maybe a bit more evidence in the direction that it might support, your brain health, and it might be more supportive for women, especially as your muscle mass declines
Yeah.
as you age. So, can you maybe discuss this one for us? Is there strong evidence or is it hype?
I would say there is strong evidence on the muscle building aspect of creatine. It's been well researched for a few decades now on the muscle building capacity. One issue that I see, or actually, I'll name a few issues I see with it. One is, as the companies have realized there's a market for women, we are absolutely seeing more and more women specific creatine. And that comes with what a lot of people call the pink tax, where it costs a
Mhm.
lot more than that bro creatine does, but it's the same thing. So in the research, creatine monohydrate, other forms of creatine are less researched, but creatine monohydrate, it's very inexpensive. Typically, the dose is around 3 to 5 grams, depending on body size, and it does help with muscle energy. Essentially, what it does is it helps us use this molecule called ATP that we might have remembered from high school biology. It helps us make energy, and we get a little bit more of it because we help recycle it essentially. But I also see a lot of my patients or women online being told to take creatine, but they don't have a regular exercise routine in place yet. The most important thing is the exercise. The creatine helps us do a little bit more at the exercise. So if you already have a regular exercise routine and say I don't know, I curl 12-pound dumbbells for my biceps. You might be able to get just that little bit more. You might be able to get that ninth rep when you previously started at 8. You might be able to move up to, I don't know, a 15-pound dumbbell or something like that. But if you don't already have the exercise routine in place, it's not going to cause muscle change because the stimulus is still the workout. Um, so that's one thing there. I also see it does temporarily cause weight retention, water retention. And so a lot of my patients are using it to improve their weight loss. Because they're trying a new exercise routine. They heard they should take creatine. And sometimes just knowing that in those first like 2 to 4 weeks, you might put on 5 to 10 pounds of water weight. You will lose it once your kidneys catch up on that extra water. But sometimes it's very defeating for people starting a new exercise routine and seeing the scale go up. A lot of people stop the exercise routine, but it was part of the creatine supplementation.
Oh, I didn't realize that. And you bring up a good point too. Creatine and kidneys, there are some risks as well. So it's definitely something to look into. Make sure you're understanding like everything that you need to know. Can you just touch upon, because I read this, and I don't know if there is truth to it, but for instance, like in the morning, I will put some creatine in my water with lemon, and I'll have that first thing in the morning. But I read that creatine can turn into a byproduct called
Yeah.
creatinine. Is that
Yeah.
true? So you
Yeah.
should really consume it within at least 1 hour versus like say throwing it in your Stanley and you're like
Yeah.
sipping on it for the whole morning, because it can change, like the properties of it can change. Is there truth to that?
Yeah, it does degrade a little bit over time if it sits for a while. So yeah, the way you're doing it by putting it in your water is the best way. Essentially, creatinine is a protein that we get rid of from our. It's in our urine. It's something we use to test the function of the kidneys, and so we don't want excess of it in our urine. But in those first couple weeks of getting used to creatine, it can change what our kidney blood parameters would be, although typically it's not going to cause an issue if there wasn't already an issue with your kidneys that you knew about.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you for clearing that up. Um, greens powders. Can you talk to us about this?
I would say I have rarely met a greens powder that's not a drain on the wallet. A lot of them are
Okay.
so expensive. And when I look at the breakdown of like what's actually in them, they'll say it's like, your full multivitamin type thing, but the dosages are so small for the like $60, $100 a month ticket that they often. Um, but us just having a few extra servings of fruits or vegetables often does.
Okay, so maybe we will save a little bit of money in that situation on the greens powders front. What about our protein powders? I know that can run the gamut, and I know protein is another one of those really big hype things that we need protein. And yes, I get that it's important, but talk to us about like supplementing with things like protein powders, protein bars, the shakes and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so like I personally use a protein powder somewhat regularly because I find just as a busy mom, the likelihood that I'm gonna have a meal on the go at some point, I like to have that available. Um, I always do when I look at my patients' nutrition, sometimes with things like protein bars, some protein powders, especially if weight loss is one of the goals. Some of those protein bars are like over 350 calories, but for a square like this big. And depending on the body size of the woman or what her exercise is like, that's a lot. But it doesn't fill you
Mhm.
up. And so sometimes it's a consideration of if that's the best choice or if that 350 calories, we need like a plate of food to make us feel full as well. Um, a lot of protein powders out there can have additional ingredients too. So it's important to check what's in my protein powder. Um, I like a flavored protein powder just because it brings some joy to my day, but I like to see that the flavors aren't um, too many additives to it. I also notice some protein powders, especially the whey based ones, if it's not a whey isolate, they can have higher cholesterol in it. And so, if cholesterol is an issue for you, or if family history wise it's been an issue, just being sure that we switch either to a whey isolate or to one of the plant based products. That can be helpful. So, we're not kind of taking care of a protein problem and causing like a cholesterol problem. But I would say, generally speaking, a lot of us, a protein powder can be helpful, but we don't need it if we're consuming enough from food.
Right. It's true, if your schedule is busy, there might be times when that's going to be super helpful. Instead of, skipping a meal and
Yeah,
then inevitably going to like something that's not going to be as good of a choice later
100%.
down the road. But you do bring up a good point, because the thing that I don't really like about something like having a shake or a bar is that even if it does fill me up, it doesn't feel like I've eaten, because
Yeah,
I love to eat.
yeah,
And so if that's replacing a meal for me, like I think it's more mind over matter. I'm like, well, it just feels like I ate this tiny little drink, like I feel like I want to eat. And so
yeah.
for me, it's just not satisfying.
Mm.
But I do understand that there are places where, it's better than not eating anything at all, or it's better if, you're on the go and you're maybe going to pick up something that's not as good of a choice. So I do really appreciate it. A few more things I do want to talk about, but if you had to simplify it, Dr. Danielle, like what consistently makes the biggest difference for women in their 30s and 40s when it comes to our overall health and well-being, and not pinpointing specific issues or concerns, but
Mhm.
sort of like these basics that might get overlooked in favor of the trend and just like
Yeah,
looking the other direction. Like what would you say makes the biggest difference for women?
100%. I think it's the boring basics. Um,
Hmm.
if you look at the current Canada Food Guide, what we have in Canada since I believe like 2016 or so is the plate method. And the idea is that half our plate is fruits or vegetables. And I always say any fruits or vegetables. A lot of us have been of the thought that some are healthier than others, but they all have different reasons. So, half our plate fruits or vegetables, a quarter of it a whole grain, like a brown rice or a quinoa or a whole grain bread, and then the other quarter from any protein rich food. So, beans, lentils, meat, fish, eggs, anything, Greek yogurt. Um, and really trying to get that as often as we can, close to 3 meals a day. So I often see a lot of my patients meeting that Canada Food Guide at dinner time and skipping it at, if they even eat breakfast, at breakfast and at lunch. But trying to get it 3 times a day gives us the opportunity to get enough protein and to get enough fiber. Um, and so even though it sounds really simple, because it sounds like what we almost know to do that, but a lot of us don't do it. So that boring basic is critical. And the other thing in the guidelines for us is to get close to 150 minutes of activity where our heart rate is raised. Um, and
Is that in
although,
a week or in a day?
sorry, yeah, that's very
In
fair.
a week.
And so it can be 150 minutes where our heart rate is raised somewhat, like a good walk or weightlifting or something like that. Or you can choose to do 75 minutes where your heart rate is raised quite high. So, like a more intense run or a more intense swim or something like that. And I think the overwhelming majority of us are not doing that. Um, and honestly, that's where I hate some of the creatine information online, is because women are being told to lower their activity so that they prevent cortisol spikes. But really, what we need to be doing likely is increasing activity.
Mm. So good. This now, I mean, boring basics. I feel like, getting down to like the brass tacks is like, take that walk, lift something heavy, eat some vegetables, have a fruit. Like, it just seems like so easy in a way, but it can be challenging to stay consistent. And
Mhm.
this brings me to my last question, because I do want to go into a rapid fire, but um, the GLP-1 medications, like I couldn't have you here without chatting about that. It's everywhere. We're seeing celebrities have these huge transformations. Can you explain what they are? Because I don't really know a lot about it, except that there are people taking it left, right, and center. How they actually work, you know, what research is there on the effectiveness and the risks, and where do you see them being helpful, and maybe why and where are people misunderstanding them? Because
Yeah,
like you're saying, we stick to the boring basics, but people see this as sort of like this quick fix that's going to solve all their problems. Can you talk to us about GLP-1s?
definitely. So,
Like, and sorry, I will preface that by saying like people might understand them as like Ozempic, or there's all sorts of different brand
yeah.
names of them, but yes,
Ozempic
it's
and
like a weight
Wegovy
loss
and all
thing.
those. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So that class of medication, it mimics one of our hormones we already have called the GLP-1 hormone. And that hormone, it's released in our gut in response to us eating. And it helps us with blood sugar regulation. It helps us get a signal from our stomach telling us we're full. It helps us to slow our digestion, things like that. And so the like overwhelming amount of the research is on patients with type 2 diabetes, and it is a treatment, different, but in similar regard to metformin for type 2 diabetes. So that's where we have our most research, and I believe in Canada it's still only approved by Health Canada for type 2 diabetes treatment. Off label, it is used for weight loss because one of the things they noticed is because it regulates blood sugar, these patients with type 2 diabetes that were on it for their diabetes lost a substantial amount of weight. And so, off label, it's being used for obesity. We have the most research on treatment for obesity, so typically a BMI over 30. What I see commonly is women with a BMI significantly under 30 wanting to use it. And we don't have a ton of data there on whether or not it will be effective and safe. But as a treatment for obesity, it is very effective. I love the new Canadian obesity guidelines. They talk about obesity being a chronic relapsing condition, which I think a lot of us can understand that it is that. We know a lot of people struggle with obesity on an ongoing basis. And because the GLP-1 hormone is like less listened to by our body, with obesity or with type 2 diabetes, it can be helpful to have it come in as a medication. But I don't know what effect it does have on people who have a healthy body weight if they need that treatment the same way. Does that make sense?
Okay. Makes sense. So someone who's just like, oh, I want to,
Yeah.
lose 10 pounds for the summer. Like we're not looking into these types of things. We're sticking to the boring basics. Is that
Exactly.
something that you would recommend? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's
Okay.
safety too. Any medication that has like a substantial effect, it's going to have inherently more side effects. Um, Yeah. And I will say there's a lot of like herbal products out there that claim to be a GLP-1 like, but natural. There's no data on those. And it's more likely if we can just, buy ourselves an extra yoga class a month, that's probably a better use of our money.
Right, because these types of things are not covered, under most health plans. These are things you're paying out of pocket to
Yeah.
to use, and to my understanding, it's something you would have to continually use, right? Like because once you stop taking this type of supplement or whatever hormone, then
Yeah.
the effects of that are gone as well. Correct?
Exactly. Yeah. So with the GLP-1 medications, they find, again, because obesity is chronic and relapsing, if we take you off of this thing that's helping you have blood sugar regulation and helping you feel more full and reducing the food noise, as soon as we're off it, those same issues come back because we're thinking of obesity as this relapsing condition like a heart disease. If we were to take you off your cholesterol meds and you have high cholesterol, genetically, it's going to go right.
Okay. Thank you for clearing that up.
Mhm.
I do want to go, there's so many trends. Like when I was preparing for this episode, I was like, there's so many things we could talk about. But I do want to just do a quick round of
Mhm.
trends that we're seeing a lot. Maybe you could give us your take on just a few of these. The first one, I really hyped it up is when I first found out about it a few years ago. Saw me a lot of social media posts wearing my
Yeah.
weighted vest. What is your take on this?
So again, the weighted vest is I think it's a great idea. Like it does add some extra to our workout. It makes it more challenging. And challenge is part of the point with exercise. I think some of the hype has come around about how much it could improve our bone density. So
Mhm.
our bone density, if our weighted vests are say 20 pounds or whatever it is, 40 pounds, if you were to gain 40 pounds and walk around all day, your bone density wouldn't change the same way as you trying to put the stressor of lifting weights is. And so I think a lot of the weighted vest companies and social media posts became with this idea that we could substantially change our bone density with weighted vests. And that's not true. It it is a bit of a stressor, but not enough to make this profound change to prevent bone loss. But I still think it's a great thing to have. Plus, I feel like anything that challenges us a little bit in our workouts is never a bad choice. I find I have had patients in the past that will delay the onset of starting their walks until their weighted vest comes through in Amazon. And really, the walk is the most important thing, although their delivery is really fast, I guess.
Yeah, as long as you got Prime, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, don't delay, just move your body, lift something perhaps instead, and focus on, your diet, the boring basic stuff.
Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
what about vibration plates? These
Yeah.
ones, I'm seeing these and I'm like, I don't have one, but I don't know.
No.
What's your take on this?
So I would say those ones, I like the weighted vest a lot better. Um, the thing with vibration plates is we don't have a ton of data on a lot of the health claims we see online. We see, it improves lymphatic drainage or it helps with weight loss. Lymphatic drainage, your lymph fluid moves whenever you move. We don't have a pump the way we do with like our arteries. And so if you are moving and the blood is flowing, the lymph gets to move throughout the body. So any movement, the walks with your weighted vest, that's going to move your lymphatic tissue. It's going to help with drainage if that's what we need. Um, and it's going to help with weight loss. And so sometimes I have patients who have bought an expensive vibration plate and they choose to do 15 minutes on the vibration plate, but we could use that 15 minutes to a short and sweet workout that will likely affect more change, or at least we have more data to say it should affect more change, and it's free. Um, so yeah, I would say those ones to me are quite a lot of hype.
Okay, that makes sense. And I recently saw another naturopathic doctor actually was like,
Mhm.
vibration plates. She's like, you want to know what works better? She's like, just take a 30-minute walk in the morning. And she's like, she did like a before and after of her face looked like a little bit maybe puffier. And then she took like no makeup on in either one. And you could see a significant
Yeah,
difference. And so I think, again, we're sticking to the boring things, the
yeah.
basic things, but are more effective. And of course, it's free. You go outside, go take a walk. It's free. Okay. What about red light therapy? And we see like the masks people are wearing for their skin. Talk to us about that.
We do have good data on red light therapy for a lot of skin conditions, from acne to wrinkles, eczema, psoriasis. We do have good data on it. Um, I need to do a deep dive into what brands are best because each of those conditions is treated by a different spectrum of light. So I think most of them fall in the 3 to 700 range. I'm curious how much some of the more inexpensive brands are like able to maintain that same wavelength. But if you were to be going to a lot of the Medi spas and places like that have these red light machines, they're often like $1,000+ Those ones are likely going to have a positive effect. I don't know about there's very inexpensive ones, and so I hesitate on if those ones are getting the right light spectrum for the conditions.
Okay. So do your research on that
Yeah.
before you're spending the money. Is that the same as an infrared, like a sauna? Is that the same type of light? And would that have the same effect then?
It would be a bit of a different type of light. The infrared saunas appear to have more of a good effect on like muscle recovery. And again, I would say that those can be great. I remember at my school during my internship, we had infrared saunas to use with patients, and they were fantastic for muscle recovery. But I often think about some of these added things as like if we have the money for them and we have the time to sit in the infrared spa and we're already doing all the boring basics, go for it. It's great. If you need time to start with the exercise and the healthier food choices, start there. And then you can always add on if you have time for it.
Okay, perfect. Last trend that I want to get your take on is cold plunging
Mhm. Yeah.
because I do not like cold water. I did see like Dr. Stacy Sims was like a lot all over social media talking about how it's different for women than it is for men. Um, what have you seen and what's more evidence based in terms of like the cold plunge situation?
For sure. I don't know if we have data to say like which gender it's most effective for. There is good research for our athletes on muscle recovery and things like that. I think if you enjoy it and it helps you, some people find it helps their mental health because it's that shock that gets the endorphins rushing. Go for it. In terms of the women versus men idea, I think a lot of that comes from a lot of like we learned in school for acupuncture, we learned traditional Chinese medicine, and they really don't promote a lot of cold things, especially for women. I don't know if we have like research to say that, but if you feel worse doing it, it's never the right choice then. Um, but you know, I don't know if it can cause full harm so long as we're warming up comfortably afterwards and so long as it's not too shocking to our systems.
Okay, that makes sense.
I don't personally do
Bef-
it because I also hate cold.
yeah. I mean, you're gonna have to show me a lot of evidence for me to just freeze my buns off. But
We live in
that's
Northern
me.
Ontario. We get enough.
we we sit in the arenas all the time. We get it. I get it. Before I let you go, I would like to do a little bit of rapid fire. And again, like I said in the introduction, like of course you're going to speak to a healthcare provider before you take any of this. Is not medical advice for you. This is more, general information. But if we were to do a rapid fire, give us your number one for all of these items, if you can, Dr. Danielle. One supplement you recommend most often.
Probably vitamin D because Health Canada recommends 1 to 2,000 for all of us. Not more. Too much is toxic. So you have to take a safe amount.
Okay. And do you recommend vitamin D taken with vitamin K, like D3 plus K2, or just D on its own?
Just be on its own. Vitamin K has a marketing team behind it or something. We get it from a lot of food. We don't typically need extra of it.
Okay. Good to know. So then one supplement that's mostly hype, we don't have to
Uh,
worry about.
I would say any of the weight loss type supplements out there, they don't really have any data behind them.
Like a gummy. Like I see a
Yeah,
lot of vitamin, like for women specifically, gummies, and I think
less.
creatine
And
gummies. Okay.
if they don't, if they do cause any weight loss, they often raise our liver enzymes, and that's a lot more dangerous for us.
Okay.
Mhm.
One habit most women should prioritize. We've got so much on our plate. What's the number one thing we should, take to heart and make space for?
That's hard. I guess it's probably half your plate fruits or vegetables. That'll do a lot for you. If you're already doing that, then I would add a walk in. A walk a day would be very good.
Okay. One thing that's overcomplicated when it comes to our wellness, like what are we overcomplicating?
Our hormones. I think we overcomplicate it a lot.
Okay. Something that you've changed your mind on over the course of time, maybe something that you loved or maybe something that you didn't love, and now you've changed your mind on it.
Mm. I think when I first started practicing, I thought um, very specific nutrition plans, and things like that was so needed. The more I work with patients and helping people do it in real time, the more I'm like, if we make it simple on you and we follow that easy Canada food guide, we don't have to get too minutia detailed. It lets us know easier. I also find, although nutrition is very important, I'm a big advocate more and more in my appointments for exercise because I think that massively changes the game for a lot of us.
Yeah, I agree. Even on your busiest day, what is something that you really, really try to focus on when it comes to your own care and overall well being? You're a busy mom, you're running a clinic, you're seeing a lot of patients. What's something like, even on a super busy day, that you're like, no, this is a non negotiable for me?
Ooh, I'm probably not letting myself go hungry. I easily would skip meals, have coffee as meals, that kind of thing, especially while I was in school. And I find that leads me to making a lot of less healthy choices later in the day. And so I really do prioritize eating 3 times a day. Even if it's something like the shake, it's probably going to be healthier for me than trying to hit up the hockey food stand.
Yeah, for sure. Last question on a perfect day, an ideal situation. How are you moving through the day? What are you making time for? And what would that ideal day look for you in terms of your overall health and well-being?
Yeah, I'm really focusing on getting that kind of Canada Food Guide plates each time. That gets me my fiber, that gets me my protein, that gets me all the good vitamins. I try to do strength training 3 to 4 times a week, and I do try to get out for a walk with the kids or the dog. If I have enough time, I'm going for a run.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Danielle Watson. I've mentioned a few times how helpful it's been to follow you on social media. So, can you let the listener know where can we find you
Yeah,
if you are in Northern Ontario? Like, we want to dive in deeper. We want to know what's something specific for us. How can we see you and how can we learn more?
definitely. Thank you. So I'm on Instagram as the Mother Doctor. I love educating on there. I feel like it's a really fun, easy way for us to get some learning. If you like to work one to one, my clinic is in the Valley. It's called Center Health. I also see patients throughout all of Ontario virtually. I can't see you if you're outside of Ontario, but you can follow the Instagram.
Perfect. And of course, you know it. The links are in the notes for this podcast episode. So definitely check it out. Thank you so much for making the time to be here. I love chatting. Let's go for a walk soon.
Yes.
My sincere gratitude to Danielle. This was such a helpful conversation. I think what we are really looking for right now is clarity. It's not necessarily more information, but better information, knowing where to turn and what to believe. And what I'm taking away from this is that while there are so many trends, so many tools, so many things that we can be doing out there, the things that actually make the biggest difference are often the most consistent and foundational. The boring basics, our sleep, our movement, our nutrition, managing our stress as much as possible, and then knowing what's actually worth your time, your energy, and yes, your hard earned money. So, thank you so much, Dr. Danielle, for helping us cut through some of that noise today. If this episode was helpful for you, please make sure you share it with someone who's trying to figure out what actually matters in their health right now. Of course, I will have all of the links in the show notes so that you can connect. Follow Dr. Danielle on Instagram, book an appointment if you are in Ontario and want to learn more. Until the next episode, please follow along, subscribe, rate, review, share all the things. I'm so happy that you tuned in for this one, and I can't wait to see you for the next one. Take good care.